Welcome. I'm Andrew Tonkovich of Bibliocracy Radio, the Santa Monica Review, and today, especially in the summer of our 50th anniversary, the Community of Writers, a collaborative creative writing summer workshops tradition held in the High Sierra of California, this year online. For more on the work of the community, please visit our website and read the newest volume of the Omnium Gatherum Quarterly, our in-house literary magazine featuring writing by our alumni, participants, faculty, and friends. For this inaugural Conversations from the Virtual Valley presentation, we present host Michelle Latiolais talking with short story writer Ryan Ridge on the occasion of the publication of Ridge's collection, New Bad News. Ridge is the editor-in-chief of the literary journal Juked, a literary comrade to many, an exemplar of robust engagement with form and voice and tradition, whose work echoes that of Beckett, Barthelme, Vonnegut, and Paget Powell. He's the author of American Homes, among other titles. The newest collection, New Bad News, out from Sarabande, won the Calvino Prize and arrives with a mordantly funny, yet somehow encouragingly sardonic title. The stories are formally whimsical, short, and poetic. New Bad News gets praise from Jonathan Lethem, who says, Ridge can kick up your pulse with a storytelling urgency that thrums. Michelle Latiolais is director of the writing programs at UC Irvine, a celebrated novelist and short story writer. She is also a much admired and valued friend of writers whose own fiction elegantly delivers starkly honest insights and explores character, place, and social expectations via precise and purposefully self-conscious commitment to language. Her books include the recent novel She and Widow, a collection of stories shortlisted for the Believer Book Award, the novel A Proper Knowledge, and the novel Even Now, which received the gold medal for fiction from the Commonwealth Club of California. And now, in the first in a series of conversations from our online retreat, the Virtual Valley, featuring writers from the community, we present your host, Michelle Latiolais, and guest author, Ryan Ridge.
Thank you. Ryan, it's so wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Congratulations on this new collection. I don't know, it may be 5 books really together, you know. If my count is accurate, there are 77 pieces here. And there really are kind of 4 separate projects that actually sing together. And then you wrote the last section, Coda, Death in California, to kind of call them all to attention, I think.
Yeah, I needed to do something at the end to bring it together. I knew that, but yeah, like you said, 4 projects that I've been working on for years that eventually, hopefully, came together.
Oh, I think they did, and they've grown, because I have read some earlier incarnations, but they certainly have grown, and I have chosen 4 readings which we'll punctuate our talk with as we go through. We're going to have a reading from each section, except for one called 22nd Century Man, which is just it's an amazing idea on your part, but I think a difficult section to read from, since it is chatbots who, if I get you correctly on this, never forget anything or never have anything stripped away from their memory. So their answers are always replete, but also don't make a lot of sense. So anyways, it'd be hard to read from that. So I picked things from the other 4 sections for you to read. So, and the first section, it's called New Bad News. The first section is Echo Park, which is 32 stories. And the idea of echoes is pretty amazing in these stories. You make this so much your own vehicle, an echo, even though Echo Park is an actual place in Los Angeles. But echoes are also something that's gone, it has died, but it still ghosts the place. Echoes are also desires and aspirations. Echoes are nostalgia. Echoes are the hollow sounds of a place. You just, you are Steinian, so, Gertrude Steinian in your sense of what a word does and how much difference it takes on every time that word is used again. So you set these 32 stories in Echo Park in Los Angeles. And the word echo, you just turn and turn and turn. And it's pretty amazing to watch you do that turning in the language. But you're a transplant from Kentucky, from Louisville. And you were in LA about 3 years, 4 years?
I think all told it was 8 years. 8 years. I stuck around afterwards a little bit, but yeah, I always say a decade, but it wasn't quite a decade.
Wasn't quite a decade. Yeah. When did Echo Park, the place, and then just how reverberative it could be in your hands as a writer? When did that occur?
In the collection, it's the piece that comes first, but I think that was the latest piece in terms of the chronology of what I'd written. I think I started writing that one in maybe the summer of 2015.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Roberto Bolaño's book, Antwerp.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to write a little book like that, and I thought, well, I'll do it with Echo Park, just because I like the name of the place.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of graphing, I wanted to do a California book too, but I wanted to graph that onto the place Echo Park. I'd spent some time there, more in Silver Lake, which is pretty close, but I just liked the name of the place, and I liked the scenery there. So it was a very fertile just to go back. I was living in Kentucky at that point in time, and it was kind of just nice to go back in my mind and go back to California and with these characters. This character really, it just follows one character who's a failed actor.
Right.
And, so to answer your question though,
what you do with the word echo, it's actually, you put the history there of this lake being dug out and echoing, and somebody saying, oh, let's call it Echo Park. But you make that word so much your own, and you make it do this work. And of the 32 sections, or 33, there are characters who ghost Echo Park too, who are gone.
Right.
Jackson Brown and
Babe Ruth and Charlie Chaplin, sure.
Elliott Smith.
Yeah, what really captivated me, I'd read somewhere, and this didn't make it into the book, but I'd read somewhere that a lot of the old silent movies were shot in Echo Park. And that was kind of the Hollywood prior to Hollywood. And so that kind of captured my imagination with that character. And what I wanted to do though is, you start in Echo Park, and then I wanted the book to kind of echo out east and south, and ultimately into the future with the 22nd Century Man stuff.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm desperately looking for your sentence. Most lives are silent films no one sees, which is in the first section of Echo Park. Yeah. Well, why don't we have you read? Yes, it's on page 17. Fire consumes businesses near the freeway. And I chose this one also to go with later pieces because, and we're going to get you to talk about death, but death and jobs and labor is also an intense concern of yours as we read through these pieces.
Okay, great. Fire consumes businesses near the freeway. Fire consumes businesses near the freeway the first Friday of every third month. The sign above tonight's burning building says, "Need cash now." But with the sign on fire, It's no longer a sign. It's a smoldering metaphor. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. That's Yeats. The residents have gathered together this evening to watch the blaze. They swallow edibles and share stories from the golden days of television. There's no business like unemployment. From our vantage point, the fiery sign says, "Ash, now." To me, there's nothing wrong with this as a business model.
Yeah. You know, and there's one of the sentences in Echo Park that have these echoes. There's no business like unemployment. There's no business like show business. And I mean, you know what? One of the things I admire so much about your writing is not that it's just economical or condensed. It's that every word does so much work. And
Thank you, Michelle.
yeah, well, and every time you come back to it too, you even hear more work that it's doing. And so I you know, it was great to go back and reread these. But, you know, just your echoes here, there's no business like unemployment, you know. And, you know, I mean, this book it's really just come out, and yet it's prophetic in many ways, you know, yeah. And I'll have you read two pieces in Coda, Death in California, in which unemployment and jobs, or the lack thereof, come up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and one thing I just before we move on from Echo Park, although you should talk about anything you'd like to talk about in Echo Park, it's just another way, you know, you have this out of work actor, and he decides to buy a motorcycle. Okay, but it's called a Triumph, right? And there's triumph here. There's certainly shadows of triumph. But really, every time the word triumph is used, it becomes more and more sort of leached of any sort of triumph at all. But it starts to also become a kind of critique on triumphalism, American triumphalism. And I just admire, you know, how you know, will make something a word. I mean, it's actually there. You're definitely a narrative fiction writer. That motorcycle's really there. He rides it. It crashes, but it's also economics at the same time. It's, you know, so I just want to draw readers' attention to, you know, the way you use language, how it's just supercharged. Every detail that you choose. And triumph, I just thought that is just a masterful choice too. And of course he has a crash on his Triumph at some point, you know, so, which is kind of perfect. So, and so the next section is, hey, it's America.
Right.
Yeah, and which is in 33, really 34 sections. It's a countdown from 33, and we get to infinity, or we get to alpha and omega. So, and I thought I'd have you read number 32. So it's pretty early on, page 50. And the narrator, I guess we should set this up a little bit. The narrator has decided to have a festival, and a festival, and it's because he keeps getting misrecognized as the creator of basically essentially Burning Man, right? Or of a big festival. It's kind of
sure. It's the one out in what's the big one in LA?
Coachella?
Coachella. Yeah, essentially like a Coachella / Burning Man deal. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so not cool. So, you know, it's anyway, he keeps getting, people keep thinking he's Paul, I think, right? The creator, or the imprimatur, what's the word for impresario of this festival. Right, and he keeps getting, you know, identified as that, you know, but he's not. So he decides nonetheless to create a festival, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so he invites Dave and Lisa, who are friends of his, and the guy he knows with guns. And of course it takes off from there. So would you please read 32, which is just the second section of Hey, It's America.
I'd love to, sure.
Yeah.
32.
It's on
Dave
page,
likes
sorry.
Dave likes to dance. It helps him beat back the blues. Last year, he lost his job as a personal shopper for a coterie of reality show housewives. And he lost it after one of his high-profile clients leaked her own grocery list to TMZ, and then blamed Dave when the stunt resulted in a network advertising boycott. Now he works at the Lullaby House on La Brea and hates it. It's the family business. His parents opened the orphanage a year before he was born. A decade later, it crushed 9-year-old Dave to learn he wasn't an orphan like the rest of the kids. He's felt like an outsider among outsiders ever since. I wouldn't say I hate my job, Dave says on the phone tonight. I enjoy helping orphans. But my parents, they're unbearable. At least they're alive, I say, feeling a sinking sadness as I say it. Go ahead, Dave says. If you want to talk, I'll listen. He means, do I want to talk about my dead parents again? I don't. Not tonight, I say. Right on, Dave says. Let's probe to the positive. You're throwing a festival, man.
Yeah. I just so amused always by also, I think you're a Kentuckian and you're used to a certain, quality of sound in the ear with respect to slang. And I think you were very quick to pick up California slang or California dude culture. And which is very funny. So
well, it's got a lot of music to the language too, as does all the regions really do if you pay attention to the music in it. Absolutely.
It's true. I think this may be a distinctly Californian thing that we don't think we have accents. And then when I watch the Californians on Night Live, I just cracked up, obviously in recognition, and of course in LA, that's of course how we talk, is one freeway leads to the next, leads to the next, and we almost don't talk about much else at times.
Right.
So, so tell us about this festival that he's going to create.
Well, the festival is kind of it starts off with no idea. It's an idealist festival. It's just a festival for the sake of throwing a festival. And what was going on at the time, I'd written that years ago as a little chapbook that was published in a box on cards. And so it's kind of making fun of that. Yeah, hey, it's America. And it's kind of making fun of just festival culture. That was when that stuff was first coming online and getting big. Coachella was huge. Burning Man was huge. And I thought, well, it'd kind of be fun to poke fun at that. But then, all these years elapsed, and then I was going to put this in the book. And one thing that really happened was the Fire Festival debacle, where they sold tickets to this festival, that on this island that was a total non-event, that a lot of people got stuck and were without water and food, and it was a disaster by many reasons. I think the promoter went to prison because he was a scam artist. So I thought, well, I'm going to go back in and kind of give it the treatment, because kind of things were syncing up with that anyway. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, what happens if you want to have a festival and with good intention and try to just do it but not know what you're doing? It's going to be a disaster, I think. And hence the character with guns who's invited early on, I think helps, escalate some of the tension towards the end. Certainly. Well, not any spoilers.
Yeah. Right. I'm never, reading your language, knowing what happens couldn't spoil it. There's so much more there. So I'm sort of without, I guess, telling people what's there, because there's so much more when they go back. But
the festival ends up being a festival where Clint Eastwood's supposed to come, but he doesn't ever come.
right. but it ends in a shootout. I should
Yeah,
say,
right.
but it ends with people getting shot, including,
Right.
The narrator.
Right.
So I mean, so that seems sort of conclusive and very distinctly American. So I didn't. So there seems to be several overlays, not the least of which is the Las Vegas shooting, in which you have a huge gathering of people, right, and somebody into them.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So do I read too much or push too much at the idea that it's in 33 sections, or it ends with infinity, alpha and the omega, and we have basically a we have certainly a death at the end. I don't know if you want to call it a crucifixion or not.
Yeah.
The idea of gathering, and the sort of emptiness of the gathering, and the guns sort of invited kind of willy-nilly, but they're going to go off.
Right. You got to load them up. They're going to have to go off, or Chekhov will come get me. But, I think, though, you're right about that. Yeah, there's certainly that analogy. But he's Christ-like in the sense that, they come to the same kind of similar demise, probably around the same age even. But this guy doesn't have any teachings. He's not really evolved, we could say.
Well, no, I mean, what the festival, it's like, well, what's at heart in the festival? And it's like, one of the sort of main ideas is we'll sell tickets at the festival for other festivals.
Right.
Right? So it becomes just a merchandising, vehicle, which of course is great, an obvious reflection,
It's like the analog version of an internet website, essentially, which there's no point in doing an analog version of internet website.
So asking for there to be a there, is also to sort of maybe miss a point, but it's very funny. And I hope we haven't, I don't think we've spoiled it in any way. So he is told various things with respect to naming it and giving it hashtags, and and he is told by Paul, who is the impresario for say Coachella or Burning Man. He's told, exploitation, youth tourism, PR team, sick memes, a sick tagline, sell things, lots of things, hot chicks and hashtags, a pop of color, Jack, right? That's it.
That's all you need.
That's all you need. So, yeah. So, so the sort of raison d'etre for the gathering is never there. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's very funny. So, okay. I'm sort of trying to watch the clock here since I'm not very experienced at this, but so the next section is called American Literature. And I suppose I'm going to get us a little into trouble about American literature here and what you might be up to. But why don't we have you read 95? It's the first section of American literature. But if you would just read to that middle, I think I gave it to you in an email, right?
Sure.
Page on 96.
Okay.
Armed. Okay.
Okay, great. American literature. Most days, like most folks, I work. At night, I sit around and have a drink and read some American literature. I'll admit, whenever I type Western canon, I accidentally add an extra N. I understand this is my subconscious mind critiquing American literature. Western canon. Go ahead. It's okay. I'm wearing a motorcycle helmet and a Herman Melville t-shirt. Go ahead and fire me from the Western canon. I'll soar over Iowa City, across the Grand Canyon, and into the lost libraries of the sea. Sometimes when I'm driving, I'll hear American literature on the radio and think, man, if this is what passes for American literature these days, we're fucked. But then I realize I'm not listening to American literature. I'm listening to the news. You won't find American literature in the news unless you're Ezra Pound. Pound, who said, literature is news that stays news. Make it new, make it news. One time I found American literature at a casino in Elko, Nevada. A Norton anthology hiding in a motel drawer where the Bible should have been. Although the Bible technically isn't American literature, it's always the best-selling book in America year in and year out. Every year I tell myself, this is the year. This is the year I'll make a significant contribution to American literature. But in reality, I make a minor contribution to my local NPR station and I move on. Speaking of moving on, they say that there are only two plots in American literature. Character comes to town and character leaves town. The third plot, of course, is an amalgam of the other two. Character comes to town and leaves. The term plot also means a small parcel of land in a cemetery. Where would American literature be if it weren't for the road? The automobile is a literary device. It's the motor of so many books, the engine. Matter of time before the wheels come off, though. Like it or not, there's a direct correlation between the price of books and the cost of gas. All the films adapted from American literature into American movies. Will someone please adapt this book already? The other day I walked out of a movie theater and into the light. The other day I was out fighting illiteracy at a neighborhood bar, but it turned out badly because it turns out this particular illiterate was strong and armed.
Thank you. So, you know, there's lots of different ways to read the various entries in American literature, but they're sort of they're marvelous sort of little miniaturizations. But something is happening in American literature right now, and barring the fact that we never really know what's going to last until some years gone by, you know. But are we creating a type of literature that's more a spin on America than a commentary that's and a probing and an excavation that gives us the news?
That's a great question. And I think that, if we're doing that, that's not a good thing probably, because I think what Matthew Arnold said, that good literature is of any kind, it has to be a criticism of life. So if we remove the criticism, then I guess according to Arnold, we'd have the definition of, well, it'd be literature, but it'd be bad literature that we're creating. I wouldn't say it'd be propaganda. It's not as nefarious as that, but it's kind of maybe more like advertising, endorsement.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. That's probably not a good thing.
I think it's not, and I think we've got a problem right now, it seems to me, with not writing the hard things, and also, you know, I think we have a kind of a police state in that you can't, you know, there's this sort of inability to distinguish a piece of writing that is writing about something and not as a proponent of that thing. It is writing about something versus something that is, you know, coming from a point of view that's untoward. But I'm not sure we shouldn't have that point of view also, to say it's untoward, and for many reasons. But we got a lot of, sort of softening, it seems to me, going on.
Yeah, you mentioned Herbert Selby Jr. before we got on the call.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about him. Would a book like Last Exit to Brooklyn be published today? I don't know. I don't know. It's tough. Maybe it would, but heavily edited.
Well, and that's, and I think that's a huge worry, right? And I think it's a powerful book. And as you all know, so, but yeah, anyway, I just, we're getting a kind of writing that is so softened. It seems to me almost, and it's not propaganda, but it's seeming to move up to spin. But you've written these sections called American literature. What were you thinking about? What were you going for in a kind of critique of American literature?
Yeah, I think in that piece, in a different section of that same piece, I was saying that a lot of novels kind of end up being kind of rough drafts for screenplays or for even TV series, and you see that happening a lot. And I feel I was very successful. I think I'm glad, hey, that's great that these writers are having success, because Hollywood does kind of pay. I mean, it seems like it's rough work to have to, kind of grueling work to have to do, but if you can get that work, good for you. But it does seem like it's almost like not necessarily about the page anymore. It's about the page getting off the page, maybe. Sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to be, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's tough.
In several of the pieces, you do seem to there seems to be a kind of a critique of American striving, of American, once
sure.
again, triumphalism and American aspirations that start to become rather puerile. Not your writing of them, but but a kind of showing of those aspirations as being, maybe the plot in which, somebody comes from out of town and cleans up the town and then leaves, a love affair with the Western,
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, love affair with the idea of a plot versus what actually is left in that town.
Yeah. With those pieces, it's, a lot of it's playing with form. A lot of it's playing with those tropes as well. You say puerile, which piece? Because that striving is.
Well, the one in, we should tell people that I think I wrote you several long questions. They're going to be published elsewhere, and you wrote answers to them. Yeah. And in American literature, in The Summer He Went Swimming, which seems to me a little like, oh, Laura just sent us a message. Okay. It's a little, The Summer He Went Swimming, it seems it's kind of a Great Gatsby in miniature.
Sure.
But it seemed to have aspiration in it, and a kind of like, you were kind of, the language was sort of, swimming pool, and he swam the butterfly in a small, overly urinated pool. Pool becomes, a perfectly chlorinated, Olympic-sized pool, right? And the sort of transformation of that, and it's sort of aspirational. And then with Kenny Bunkport, right? I mean, then we're in, a word that always signals to me the Bush family compound, right?
Oh, yeah. I read that piece I was a visiting writer at a little small school out in Maryland, and there was a guy there that talked to me afterwards, and he was a real liberal guy, but he happened to be George H.W. Bush's archivist at the National Archives for years. And he said, I have to ask you, is that piece about George W. Bush? And I said, well, actually it is. And so he said, well, that was very charitable of you, very kind, portrayal of him. And I said, yeah, because I think I wrote this piece back when I was a student of yours. I mean, this is maybe the oldest piece in the book. And I wrote that during the Bush year, the end of the Bush years, when I thought, hey, we're going to be lucky to make it through the afternoon, any afternoon. I just thought, that crew, whew, they were capable of anything. Who knows, who knows what's going to happen here. So yeah, that was kind of me making peace with someone who I thought, had us all going the wrong direction. How many wars were we in at that point? 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know. We were everywhere.
I think we're still in some of those wars, yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Afghanistan never ends. Yeah. So that was it.
Yeah. It's interesting that you wrote that about the Bush, because something my father always said is that the Bush family went from Connecticut to Texas,
Right.
Kind of become a political family, and he kind of, that annoyed him, and it felt like a type of carpetbagging to him, So,
Absolutely. I mean, they were the kind of the first ones that started moving around to the right place. You have Mitt Romney from here who went to Massachusetts, and then he started, it's kind of common practice now.
Right.
You want to be a governor, go to where it looks like you can win.
Yeah. But you are mapping American literature and the idea of plots and somebody coming in from out of town.
Sure.
On the political landscape so beautifully, so.
Yeah, that happens again and again in that section where characters are coming to town or leaving town. So I kind of set up the thesis right there. And then that's kind of what happens throughout that entire section. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't get ad nauseum, but yeah.
No, because you're changing and the long Kilroy is fabulous, so
Thank you.
Different with the coming and going every section. So all right, we should probably move to Coda.
Okay.
In California. And I thought if you would just read that first section called Terminal.
Sure, yes. Terminal. Death waits at a desolate departure gate at the end of the Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX. The Singapore airline flight to Kuala Lumpur he's set to sink into the Pacific later tonight is delayed. And he's frustrated because death waits for no one, at least in theory. But here, in practice, he remains at the most depressing airport in the world, perusing a copy of Time magazine he lifted from a nearby kiosk. Death loves Time. Always has. He's graced the cover dozens of times over the decades in various guises and disguises. Now he's transfixed by an article about the Anthropocene entitled Bad News for Earth. According to the writer, our planet, once heralded as the essential life support system of the known universe, is now in need of its own life support system. Translation: 75% of the Earth's species are primed for extinction. Death taps the equation into his iPhone calculator, and the math is not on his side. To scale to this magnitude, he'll need to hire and train an additional 76 million staff reapers by 2076. He's filled with fatigue and dread. Perspiration berates his brow. He glances at the updated data on the departure monitor, and the damn flight is further delayed, and that is enough. Death needs a vacation. When was the last time he took any time for himself? Answer: never. He calls jobs in hell, and it goes straight to voicemail. Steve, it's me, buddy, he says after the beep. I'm gonna take a little time off. I thought you'd be a great interim. Pay's nice, robust 401k. Benefits too. Holler. He hangs up. Seconds later, Steve Jobs texts back about the job. Jobs sends a one-word reply. Okay. Death sets his work email to out of office and exits the airport. It's early evening outside the terminal. Terminal. Death likes that word. He lets the final L linger in his mind as he lifts a finger and hails a cab. He prefers cabs to Uber because it's the future now, and cabs are dead.
I think that's it's an incredible reading to end on. And although, you know, the idea that we have done our own graves, of course, is so horrifying with death recording. So, yeah, exactly. Anyway, so thank you, Ryan. And
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for the close reading. Thank you for teaching me everything I know.
Oh, please, no. I had the great honor of being able to read Ryan Ridge for 3 years. So thank you. And thank our host, Andrew Tonkovich.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
And our producer, Laura Howard. So.
Thank you, folks. You're two of our favorite people, Michelle Latiolais and Ryan Ridge. His collection is out now. It looks like this. Indeed, thank you to Eva Mellis, our engineer, Laura Howard, our producer, and executive director of the Community of Writers, Brett Hall-Jones. Stay tuned for our next Community of Writers Conversations from the Virtual Valley. And please find the newest Omnium Gatherum Quarterly online at the website, featuring prose and poetry, stories and craft talks from members of our community, a celebration of our 50-year commitment to art, creative collaboration, social justice, and the joyful, vigorous expression of the imagination. See you next time.